Welcome to the Krish Marketing Podcast, your go-to resource for mortgage and real estate professionals as well as fellow marketers. Join your host, Krish Dokia, an award-winning Chief Marketing Officer at Kind Lending, LLC, bringing over 20 years of expertise in crafting successful marketing campaigns for billion-dollar organizations. Now sit back and relax while you listen to valuable insights and strategies to elevate your marketing game in the competitive world of real estate and mortgages.
So welcome back to another episode of Krish Marketing Podcast. Today, we're launching Season 2, Episode 1, and I couldn't think of anyone better than our friend Jarrod Glandt, the president of Grant Cardone Enterprises, where he has worked as the right hand to Grant Cardone for 13 plus years. He has helped drive company revenues from $2 million in sales well into 9 figures. He is the host of the millennial focused Young Hustlers podcast, where he has shared tips on sales, marketing, money, entrepreneurship, probably parenting as well. I know that wasn't part of the description, but I follow you, Grant. Sorry, Grant. That's horrible. Sorry, but and we'll edit that piece.
No. I mean, that's always anytime I can be modeled after a billionaire, I'll take it.
There you go. And coincidentally, we both work for billionaires.
Yeah, right.
And Glenn and Grant, I think, connected. I don't know how the story goes, but
from the show, Undercover Billionaire.
From the show, right? They were both in the Undercover Billionaire, and I've seen some clips where Grant and Glenn are walking out of the plane on the tarmac or whatever, and side by side. It's really cool. And then last year, you and I connected through scheduling Grant to come out and speak at the Kind Lending event.
Yep.
Which was awesome. He is not afraid of some F-bombs, right? As a marketer, in my entire history in corporate American marketing is very stuffy, right? And I think that's why Glenn and Grant get along so well, is because they're under this, they're not in that box. Yeah. They're completely doing things just rogue out of
their way. Their way.
Do you think people hate Grant and you and just the way things are because you guys are so bullish and different?
I mean, I think there's probably a lot of reasons why people hate what we're doing. Look, if you want to be heard today, there's so much noise. Like, you have to have an opinion. And the people with the strongest opinions are the ones who get the attention. The people with the loudest voices are the ones who get attention. And the problem that most business owners have is they believe they've got this great company, business, service, product, and they don't tell anybody about it. And so the natural thing to do, because, when people look at how Grant markets, and Grant is one of the best promoters on planet Earth. I mean, he's incredible. And I think a lot of times when people see somebody like him promoting the way that he does, they take out of context. They think that, Grant is just this way because this is how he is, but he's doing it because he's a promoter and he understands how to get people's attention and keep it. Absolutely. And if that, and to a degree, I think folks who are unwilling to do that, naturally when you have something or do something that people want and can't get for themselves, they want to find a way to have a negative opinion of you for it. And so, Grant is a superpower. He is a superpower with it. He does things that I could never say or do, but that's why I am who I am and he is who he is.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been really kind of fascinated after you and I met last year, as we were planning and all these things. I followed you on Instagram, and this is about you, Jarrod, because I don't know a lot of young people with the aptitude and the mentality that you have, right? And I don't think it's a generational thing. I don't know what it is, right? I tell people I'm 30. I'm actually going to be 44 next month. And so I'm aging.
I turned 40 last year. So you said young. I'm like, well, thanks for that.
Well, but we have kids about the same age. We have our own personal lives. We have our hobbies. But yet you're able to go out there and impact others around you. And it doesn't take a college education. It doesn't take working at the biggest Fortune 500 company to do those things. You've been able to kind of absorb the content that maybe Grant provides, the people around you. You've made a lot of connections. And I see some of the things you post. I'm like, man, that's so powerful. You said it with 10 words. And I have the gift of gab. I like to talk, right? That's maybe why I have a podcast.
Yeah.
But I want to kind of dig into Grant Cardone and how and why you met him, because that was a really cool story that I read about.
Yeah, I mean, I was just at a moment in my life where, you know, all my friends were starting to get married and have kids and, you know, like get their shit together.
Yeah.
And I was still like, you know, wasn't there yet. And I was still wanting to go out on the weekends and, you know, go out late and party and, you know, doing things that I shouldn't have been doing. And I felt like musical chairs was being played, and the music was slowing down and people were grabbing seats. And I'm like, oh dude, like you got to go. And unfortunately this happened for me at 26 and not at 18. Sure. But I did grow. I mean, I grew a lot in that period, but ultimately I was just in a position. I had a job. I was working for a friend of mine, one of my best friends actually. And it just wasn't the job wasn't something that I was super excited about. I mean, it was I just wasn't happy, and I was trying to figure my way out. And I had moved around a little bit, and my dad had sent me a YouTube link one day for Grant's page. And he was like, hey, he was running a motorcycle dealership in Austin. He said, hey, I just bought this program for my team, you know, a DVD program or a CD program or something like that at the time. Right. And he's like, this is the type of thing that you should be doing. And I remember I went on Grant's YouTube page. There were maybe 20 videos or something like that. And I went and binge watched all of them. Actually, while I was on the job working that I hated, I'm like, I go through this and I'm like, oh my gosh, like he just woke something up inside of me. And I knew that he had something like there. I'm like, there's something special about this guy. And I want to try to run after this. And so I called the office every day for a month and a half until somebody agreed to interview me. And then they invited me up for an interview on a Sunday. And it was like 9 o'clock. I get the call. I'm in San Diego. They're like, yeah, he can meet with you at noon today. And I'm like, I'm in San Diego. Like it's a 2 hour and 45 minute drive with no traffic going 90 miles an hour the whole way. And so I threw the nicest thing that I had at the time, and I was broke, nicest thing on, and I jammed up there and ended up getting there. And a guy that was working for him said, oh man, he had to leave. He had to go get on an airplane. He had to leave town. So I was like, dang. And so this guy kind of like interviewed me. Grant had just hired him too. And then he was like, all right, well, you know, like let's do this. And I'm like, okay. And then I had to move from San Diego to LA. I'd always had roommates. And so like I had to leave my family, my friends. I didn't know anybody in LA. And, you know, LA was always like the cool big brother for San Diego. You know, it's like the big city, right? And so I moved up there and I had to confront a lot. And most of it was just like leaving the thing that was comfortable to me. And I remember saying, I'm like, dude, now's the time you have to do this. Like you have to get radically uncomfortable. Everything that you've been doing has been comfort and access or ease has always been a factor. And I made the move, and it was terrifying and scary. And I had to find a roommate on Craigslist and you know, like do all this stuff that I never had to do before. I mean, it's like people make, you know, they'll be like, oh, you never got a roommate before. Every roommate I ever had was somebody that I knew was a friend of mine. They're like, hey, let's get a place together. And so the reason I say that is because like, man, the people that have done big things have always had to get really uncomfortable doing it. And if you don't put yourself in those situations, you never know what you're really going to give up on. And you truly never know what you're made of, you know?
Absolutely.
Dude, I slept on an air mattress for the first 2 years that I worked there. I was making 12 grand a month, 13 grand a month. And I was sleeping on an air mattress still. Cause I was like, I'd had a little bit of money at one point cause I had a good sales job selling advertising when I was like 21. And then started partying and doing drugs and all that kind of stuff and became a loser. And so like, I was terrified of losing any of the money that I was making. And so I was like, saved every penny, spent like no money, drove a borrowed car from my mom until it started shutting off when I was driving it, and then at the end of the second year, I made my first investment in a real estate deal with him before Cardone Capital. And I mean, it was just his brother, his mother-in-law, and his two sisters. And so that's when I started just watching, and I'm like, okay, what's this guy doing? He's got a big house on the hill in LA. We're doing all this business stuff, but I'm like, he's got this real estate thing he keeps talking to me about. Like, I want to get involved in that.
Yeah.
And so that's awesome. That's sort of the start of the genesis of the story.
I think that everyone has that story in them. They just don't know how to portray it outward, right? And use it as a catalyst to build. You were 26. I was 32 before I figured anything out.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so late in life. And I've got an 18-month-old and a 5-year-old because I'm behind, but it's never too late. One. But two, going back to our audience, which is, mortgage loan offices, mortgage brokers, real estate agents, and they just came out of one of the crappiest years in the history of mortgage.
Yeah.
Right. And they have to question, man, is this the right job for me? So when you had that pivotal moment in your life, right, whether it was the partying or, hey, things are just not looking up, like I've got to change something. One, it's never too late, but 2023 was a challenge across the board.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a lot of winners as well. A lot of winners. People were exiting the industry in droves, right? And someone was picking up that market share, even though it was little bits and pieces of the market share and not as much as they were used to during the refi booms or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, those folks that question even now, shit's not going my way.
Yeah.
When am I going to see this light at the end of the tunnel? It might never come.
Yeah.
You have to kind of create your future. So what advice would you give to just the whole gamut of anyone that's affected in this industry over the last year and a half that are questioning what's next for me? Should I keep doing it? And I'll just remind you on a little podcast of yours that I listened to back in 2022, you mentioned on this podcast 3 tips that you gave, which was frequency, conviction, and consistency. And thinking about those 3 pieces and why people should keep pushing. And so the question, of course, is what would you tell people that said, hey, I can't do this anymore?
I mean, there are ebbs and flows of life. There are, particularly in real estate for the last 100 years, it's a cyclical business. Mm-hmm. Like it's like I in my lifetime, I've seen 2 mass exoduses from when I was actually aware and paying attention from real estate. I worked for a mortgage company in 2008.
Wow, what a year to be in it.
Yeah. And it was like, and I went to work for a buddy because he started it in like 2005. And I'm like, this kid's 24 years old. He's driving a turbo Porsche. He's got a big house. I had friends that were working for him. I'm like, they're making like 40 grand a month. I'm like, dude, what's going on with this? And so late to the party, Jarrod shows up, and then the world falls apart, and then they have to close the business down. So it's like I saw that. Same thing happens in the real estate market. Same thing happens during COVID. Same thing happened last year. Like there's just all these lockup moments. And so I think what you have to understand is that those are the moments where the stars are born. Mm-hmm. And like for me, I came to work for Grant in 2010, and we were primarily working with the auto industry at that point. And I was cold calling car dealers. And so September 2008, GFC, everything blows up. Nobody really knows what it means, but things are starting to lock up. 2009, they start digging through everything and figuring everything out. Towards the end of 2009, you're getting auto manufacturers. The business literally got cut in half, the entire business. They closed down like I don't know, like thousands and thousands there's 20,000 car dealers in the country, and they closed down like 40% of them. Like it was crazy. It was devastation. And that's when I started. So I started in this time that was just like brutal. Yeah. And I think what's important to understand, like when the pie gets smaller, the weak run away and the hungry go get their piece. And there's always a piece in every market. What there's a lack of is a lack of people that are committed enough to go after it. And so like you mentioned frequency, conviction, and commitment or consistency. I forget which one you said, but both of them, like the people who win the game are the ones who run the play. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you got to show up, you got to train, you got to be disciplined, you got to diet, you got to exercise, you got to get on the field, you got to run the routes. You know, Michael Jordan used to talk about, he was like, dude, I used to practice so hard that the games were easy. The battle was won in preparation. Mm-hmm. And too many people don't spend time just understanding what is the play, run the play, like trust the play. Like it's not a new thing. The real estate business, the mortgage business is a proven thing for the last 40 years. There is a play that you run that works. Absolutely. And when people deviate off of that, or they think that when there's some big correction that business is still going to be business as usual. That's not what happens. What happens is you have to work twice as hard to get for what you were getting before. And because of that, they think that there's something wrong with them or that it's not a good opportunity anymore. But the reality is all that is it's a purge of all the weakness in the business. That's why the average real estate agent makes like 20 grand or 30 grand a year or something like that, is because they sell a house to a friend and then they realize they're like, oh shit, I got to build a pipeline. I got to make calls every day. Like I thought I could just, show a couple houses on the weekend and just hang out at the beach or whatever, Monday through Friday. And it's not the case. There's a play, and the play is the same in every sales role. Contacts equal contracts. Outflow equals inflow. Like you got to put it out. My brother-in-law just recently started as a real estate agent, maybe 9 months ago. I'm like, bro, it is a contact game. It is an outbound game. Like you have to create everything. So you got to show up every day knowing that nothing is going to happen unless you create it. And you need to find a way to make 200 calls a day. If you're calling the local phone, like you need to just figure out who to call, because your business is about making contacts and building a pipeline, because not everybody's going to be a buyer or a seller when you call them. They do this transaction once, maybe in a lifetime. Mm-hmm. You want to be the person that they think of when they're in that situation. And so the only way you can do that is by making contact. And so it's a pendulum, like in the beginning of any sales job where it's pipeline built, like you are a disproportionate amount of time and energy is doing work that you are not rewarded for in that moment. And it's your ability to run that play and build that pipeline and fill it up with people and mine the database, and continuing to do that for enough time where the pendulum swings and deals start popping out the back end. And
you're definitely a motivator, my friend. You're definitely a motivator. I'm literally about to go out, get my real estate license tomorrow and go start selling. Cause like, I mean, it's a coach's mentality, right? Like you have to be able to coach.
No, it's a winner's mentality. It's like, dude, do you want to win the game? Do the work. Like Absolutely. It's not about, and it's not even about, oh, I don't feel like it today. You know how many times I woke up going, man, I do not want to go make 200 calls today to car dealers, get cussed at, get hung up on, it was brutal. They got to be the hardest people in the world to cold call. Because they were mean too. Like it wasn't just like
they do it themselves, right?
Yeah.
They tune out the BS.
Yeah. So they think that, and I'm selling them sales training.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's like, they're like, no, dude, I got that covered. And so then I got to overcome that. So it's like, they're grading you on everything. They believe that they're the world's greatest gift to the sales industry, and that they can do everything on their own. And it's like, you had to sell against that. So, I mean, every cold call is a hard call, but I always thought that I have a special place in heaven for the work that I did in the beginning.
I mean, selling the seller, right? I mean, that's really a different take. We as marketers, right? So I had a webinar earlier, like about an hour ago, with hundreds of mortgage brokers that work with Kind Lending. And I went there and made a bold statement that sales is marketing and marketing is sales. There's no difference, right? Whether you're afforded the ability to have access to this entire ginormous marketing team, or you are left on your lonesome to do it your damn self. And that is where most originators, most real estate agents are having to fend for themselves, right?
Well, a cold call, by the way, like
Yeah.
people think a cold call is sales, but a cold call is actually a marketing activity.
Absolutely.
It's a low leverage, high, there's a high requirement on you. You don't have any scale to it, but it's basically just going, hey, my name's Jarrod. Can I get a minute of your time? Like it's just getting somebody's attention. And that's what marketing is. Now, what you say after that point, it becomes a sales process. But marketing is driving to get attention, persuade, to drive an outcome. Sales is getting somebody's attention, running them through a process to drive an outcome. It's the same thing. I believe that marketing, coming from a very sales heavy background, I believe that marketing now, knowing what I know now, marketing is far senior to sales.
Interesting. Okay.
Because, if you think about this, think about a company that has the world's greatest sales process, but nobody knows who they are. I mean, that company could do well and make money.
Right.
But you're never going to hear about them. How many companies do you know that do billions that have a terrible sales process, but you see them everywhere?
Red Bull is the first one I always think of. They were marketing first.
Terrible product. Like it's not even good for you. There's plenty of things that reason say it's a terrible product for you. And there's probably zero customer support or help. I think about Best Buy because I just remodeled the house. And I'm like, dude, I spent $75,000 at Best Buy on equipment and electronics and kitchens and all this stuff. And I'm like, it was the worst experience I ever had. I could not get customer service. The sales process sucked in the store. But they had marketed themselves as the one-stop shop for everything for home and electronics. And it's right down the road from me. Location is marketing.
Yep.
And I'm like, I still go there. I'm like, I freaking hate it every time I give them my money. But I'm like, but that's a perfect example of a company that spends hundreds of millions of dollars a year on marketing. And most people that have interactions with them are like, dude, I can't even get somebody to help me in the store. And if I call somebody, it takes 45 minutes to get somebody on the phone to ask them a question.
Absolutely. It behooves me. I've been doing marketing for 22 years in different capacities and real estate and mortgage and whatever. And the feedback I always get is like, you stay in your lane, right? I'll do me, you do, it's like the sales guy that you're the auto dealer that you were trying to sell to, right? And going back to that piece, all I can picture when you were just telling me that was Jordan Belfont from Wall Street, Wolf of Wall Street. Remember when he's like, he sells it. They're trying to sell the same dog shit, penny stocks or whatever they were trying to sell, and he gets on
the scam. It was a fraud. So
it's probably not the greatest example.
Yeah,
but you know what I'm saying, right? So, we have a lot of loan officers and real estate agents that are just clamoring for the same business, high rates and low inventory and excuse after excuse after excuse in most cases. And, a couple of things that I've been showcasing to our partners and people that I speak to is hyper-local targeting, hyper-local marketing. Own your region, own your area, and then expand outward, right? Be laser focused. And a lot of people have a problem with that, especially in the licensed mortgage world, where they have this footprint of like, I'm licensed in 9 states. Well, you're not doing business in a lot of them, right? A lot of this referral based and things like that. What is your advice if you have a real estate agent or a mortgage loan officer that's listening today that, hey, I'm licensed in multiple places and I'm just not getting enough traction? Where would you just tell them to start in life and building their pipeline in those places? What's the best?
Yeah, I mean, like for me, it would all start with creating content online. Like that's an easy way for you to start working out your messaging, finding out what people are interested in. So like it's free and it gives you a lot of reach. And so money follows attention.
Absolutely.
And if you become the mortgage expert and you build a following of people because you provide mortgage and real estate tips and information, that is a nationwide network, probably a global network, but you let's just take the US for first example. Like you have the ability to take that audience and monetize it even outside of those 9 different states. Partner up with a company, get referral fees or finder fees by pitching them deals. Hey, I'm not licensed in Texas, but I have a resource there. Let me get you connected with them. They'll run it through for you, and then you get your little referral fee. So for me, it would start with content, but that would be like that. I would find the time to. I would try to make as little time as possible to create content. Like I would spend as little time as possible on creation of content. But I would do it. So, whether that's leveraging ChatGPT to create video scripts. By the way, ChatGPT will only get you 70% of the way there. You're going to have to make it real and not from a machine, because people will know the difference. Use it to help with newsletters, like get all the basic outreach components put together. But start just providing value every single day. Develop this muscle of that. And as a part of that, start getting on other people's podcasts. Go into your community, create a podcast called the Krish Marketing Podcast, or the Jarrod's podcast for entrepreneurs. And each of those 9 states, just say, hey, I've got a podcast where I bring on business owners from this state to showcase them and their business to my community. It's a great way for you to promote your business and get introduced to my audience. And I'd love to have you as a guest. Boom. They say yes. You get them, you interview them, and then you turn it into a sales call at the end of the interview.
I love it.
It's a great way to leverage a podcast. But then you got to go out and you got to do the work. Like I'm calling broker, interior designers, call all the home services. Like there's 2 ways to go about it. You can either call one person that controls one sale, which would be the end user customer, or you can find one person that has the potential to control a lot of sales. Absolutely. So like, go partner with a big HVAC company in town and tell them, hey, dude, introduce me to all your clients and I'll cut you in. I'll cut you a piece of the deal every time I do a deal. I'll be your trusted real estate person. Anybody I sell houses to, I'll recommend them to you as the service provider. And you start building a network, but it starts with a contact. So you've got the content machine kind of building and working over here. You're not going to be a celebrity influencer overnight. It's about running the play. It's about creating YouTube videos on a page, not so that you get 1 million views on one video, but so that when I meet Krish in the grocery store, I'm like, hey, dude, here's my card. Check out my YouTube video. I've got a ton of free information on there about buying a house, selling a house, getting a mortgage, questions to ask, mistakes people make, cheapest deals, most expensive deals, blah, 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 blah. Go check it out. Then they go on your YouTube page and you've got like a billboard running of 50 or 60 or 80 or 100 videos that they can binge on and develop a bigger relationship with you, because you're probably not going to sell them on you writing their mortgage in the cereal aisle of the grocery store. They're going to meet you. They're going to want to get connected with you. And then eventually at some point, maybe you earn their business. So it's at the guerrilla level. Like it always starts there.
Absolutely. I think sales, marketing and sales is so connected that people kind of market themselves and do themselves a disservice when there is no journey, right? It is you telling someone what you do and expecting them to give you their business without them being able to search you, find you, whatever. What I love about when you said now everyone's going to be a super influencer, there are some, and they're doing an incredible job, and their business is shows it, right? EXP has a lot of influencers. We have a loan officer that's like 2 million followers on TikTok. Yeah. Right. And it's he's become that authority. You have to earn that, right? But I love that you said only a small portion of your time needs to be dedicated to that, because you have to figure that piece out. There's a joke in real estate when I was in real estate marketing. If the agent is sitting behind the desk, they're not making any money.
Yeah.
Because they don't have boots on the ground. And if all they're doing is the content part, then when are you closing the deals?
Yeah. Right? I mean, I think some people are just going to find a crutch. It's easier for them to sit in their office alone and make a video and then spend a bunch of time editing it and go, this is the one, this video, I'm going to get a deal from this video. It doesn't work like that. the minority of your time should be spent on creating content, and the majority of your time should be spent getting in front of people, making calls, going to meet people. Again, like you can go and try to find one person that represents one deal. But the question that I would challenge you to ask are, who is the one person that I can sell that controls a lot of deals and a lot of relationships? So how can I go sell one people and get access to a lot of relationships rather than just doing a deal at a time? But the truth is you need to do them both.
Yeah. I just thought of this, Jarrod, and maybe I can make sense of this thought, right? Is you said you were cold calling years ago, and you still probably have to do it every so often, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Your conversion on 100 calls is probably could be related to the number of frequent videos that you might have created as far as content, right? You might have created 100 videos, but only two of them stuck, just like the two calls that got answered and got converted. So there's a huge correlation between the two. They do coexist. One maybe you mentioned, which was really probably a good pat on the back for me to say, oh, marketing is super important, because I think that way as well, right? That the process starts with marketing, but it doesn't end with sales either, right? There's a post marketing, there's the tactics involved in the sales process for email drips or whatever, and they're one and the same, absolutely one and the same. So I loved your commentary. You talked I don't know if you remember this, about landing your dream client and building a pipeline. Have you heard of that one? Do you remember that? You said a lot of good things.
Yeah, I 100 episodes or something like that.
So, but I listened to that. When I research and talk to my guests, and Jarrod, I'd already been following you. I love your family and the pictures and the speaking engagements and podcasts and things. And you're very human, which is super, super cool as well. And back to, again, this is the year, right? If you had any objections to growing your business in 2023, there was a lot of obstacles. This is the year that everyone builds their business, builds their pipeline, because what you and I probably are aware of, that most people are kind of, pushing behind the scenes, that it didn't happen, but it did. In 2020, 2021, there was this refi boom, and everyone had too much business, that more than they can handle. And then they forgot about the pipeline business. Yeah. And so this is the year that you build it and you continue to plug away. But that's not the case for a lot of people. People aren't willing to,
Well, I think there people get this idea. I know, because I've caught myself doing it. Yeah. Much less today, but even today, it still happens where you're like, man, there's so many people doing this. It's saturated. There's no way I'm going to get a deal. Like even where we're at today, I keep being reminded about how big the U.S. economy is. Like, it is unfathomable how big it actually is, how many transactions are actually happening, how many homes people you can't even, like, when you look at the numbers in totality, you can't even process what that means. People go, the difference between a million houses sold and 2 million houses sold. You're like, oh, it's 2 million, whatever, big deal. It's double. Like it's double. Like these numbers just get so big, but people live in their little bubble, and then they think like, oh man, there's too many people doing it. The reality is that the majority of people in business, and I know this because I've worked with, spoke in front of, talked to, sold to tens of thousands of businesses. Most of them are ran terribly, not by ill intent or anything, but they are ran terribly. They don't follow through. There's no connection between sales and marketing. They have bad process. They have little technology, but most it's just people are terrible at executing. And so you're worried about the broker that you see on Instagram all the time, but dude, he ain't selling anything. You know, you're like, oh, this mortgage guy's got 2 million followers. Well, maybe at that level he's doing some business, but you're thinking, oh man, this is so saturated. Like, you got to get out of that. Like, you just have to assume there's nobody on the playing field and just decide that you're going to show up, run the play. You're never going to quit, and you're going to outwork everybody else. Like, you have to be willing to make some commitments. Like I said in the beginning, like, you have to have imbalance before you can have balance. Like, you can't start something new and think that you can't work like the guy that's been doing it or gal that's been doing it for 20 years when you get started. Like, you earn into that when you build your team. You can't have balance without imbalance. The first 2 years I worked for Grant, I slept on an air mattress, even though I didn't need to. And I was working from 6 a.m. in the morning. I'd show up in the office at 6 a.m. because I was calling businesses on the East Coast that opened at 9. I'd show up at 6 a.m. in the morning, and I'd work till 7 o'clock at night every day, Monday through Friday. And then I'd come in on the weekends from probably 7 o'clock on Saturday to 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday. And then I took Sundays off. I did that every day, every week for 2 years.
That's the way. I mean, it's commitments and it's consistency. Everyone that we've seen that is, I mean, like, you can talk about Mark Zuckerberg, you can talk about any of these people. They didn't sleep until the job was done, right? I mean, that's the level of commitment that is required. You think about these guys on Wall Street, right? I know some of my cousins that were investment bankers, and they're like, you know, I'm junior, whatever. I'm working 100 hours a week. I was like, wait, is there 100 hours in a week? I don't know. You know, I mean, it takes that level of to compete and beat out the competition. And that's what it is about. Our mortgage brokers, independent, there's a lot of them, and they're all seemingly going after the same business, but they're really not. And so that is the truth. So I know that we've taken up a lot of your time. And Jarrod, you know, listen, like, you are awesome. We love hearing from you. Hopefully we'll get you back on it at some point. Maybe you'll invite me if you ever restart that podcast.
Yeah, if I ever restart it, I gotta get myself resold on it. I keep making excuses saying I don't have time, but I know that ain't the truth.
Absolutely.
You make time for things that matter to you. So
I'm in Texas, so maybe there's a connection there as well at some point. But, you know, again, we really appreciate your time. We're going to include the links to follow you, to connect with you, to listen to us, you know, learn about the 10X programs and the events that are happening. I heard last year, how many people, what is the max amount of people that you've had at one of these 10X conferences?
33,000, 33,500, 34,000.
I cannot fathom that. I just did an event with 1,000 people, and I'm still hungover from it. And that was we'll have 4,500 people at GrowthCon this year. We'll probably have, I mean, I'll register virtually because we're doing GrowthCon virtual for free this year. Oh, wow.
So this is the first time we've ever done it. I think we'll register 200,000 people for it and probably get 50 or 60,000 to show up virtually. And if people want to take advantage of that, you can register at 10xvirtual.com. And it's free. You get to come all 3 days. It's the first time we've ever done it. We want this to be our biggest ever. We want to show people what this event's all about.
That is really cool. So again, I'll be there. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'll come.
Let's go.
But again, Jarrod, thank you so much. Krish Marketing Podcast, as always, supporting our brokers, the real estate agents, our loan officers, and marketers, fellow marketers. So as always, we end with stay curious and keep marketing.